Have you ever looked at your garden at the beginning of the season and thought, there has to be an easier way to keep this soil covered all year? Maybe you've spent weekends unloading bags of wood chips, spreading straw between rows, or hauling compost just to keep weeds under control. And then, a few weeks later, the mulch thins out, weeds push through anyway, and the soil dries out faster than you expected. Well, what if I told you that you could skip that entire cycle? What if instead of hauling, spreading, and refreshing mulch every single season, you could simply plant two incredibly effective seeds and let nature maintain the soil for you? In today's video, I'm going to introduce you to two living mulch plants that protect your soil, suppress weeds, conserve moisture, and actually improve fertility over time. These plants don't just cover the ground, they build a living, self-renewing shield that works continuously in the background while your vegetables grow above it. We're going to explore how these plants function, why they outperform traditional mulch in the long run, and how you can use them in any backyard garden, from raised beds to in-ground rows to greenhouse walkways. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to seed, manage, and maintain your own living mulch system so your garden becomes easier to care for, healthier, and more productive year after year. Now let's talk about the first seed that can completely transform the way you garden: white clover. If you've ever seen those beautiful, low-growing green carpets in orchards, vineyards, or regenerative farms, you might already be familiar with this plant. But what many home gardeners don't realize is that this humble little clover can become one of the most powerful tools in your backyard garden, especially if you're tired of dragging around mulch. White clover works as a permanent living mulch. Instead of breaking down like wood chips or straw, it keeps growing, healing, and covering the soil all season long. It forms a dense mat of foliage, only a few inches high, which means it never competes seriously with your vegetables for sunlight. At the same time, it's strong enough to outcompete most weeds. This balance, gentle with your crops, aggressive towards weeds, is what makes it such a remarkable natural mulch. But the real magic of white clover happens underground. Clover belongs to the legume family, and that means a partnership with nitrogen-fixing bacteria. These bacteria live inside tiny nodules on the roots and capture nitrogen from the air, converting it into a form plants can use. In simple terms, clover literally creates fertilizer right inside your garden. Vegetables like tomatoes, brassicas, and peppers love this natural nutrient boost, and gardeners often notice better growth and deeper green leaves when clover is growing nearby. Clover also keeps the soil cool during hot weather. Its leaves shade the surface, preventing the sun from baking your beds and drying them out. If you live in an area with scorching summers or unpredictable heat waves, you'll appreciate how consistently moist the soil stays beneath a clover cover. Instead of evaporating during the hottest hours of the day, water remains where your plants can actually use it. Planting white clover is surprisingly simple. You don't need to dig or till. You don't need to bury the seeds. In fact, clover germinates best when it's scattered directly on top of the soil. After broadcasting the seeds, just lightly press them into the surface using your hand, a board, or even your feet. Water gently, and within a week, you'll see tiny emerald dots appearing. Over the next few weeks, these seedlings weave together into a soft, living carpet. Clover works beautifully between rows, under tall vegetables, and in pathways where you'd normally get mud or persistent weeds. Once established, it tolerates mowing, foot traffic, and even light shade. And unlike many aggressive ground covers, it rarely becomes invasive. It stays low, spreads slowly, and can be trimmed easily if needed. If your goal is to cut down on mulching work, white clover is your long-term solution. Once your garden has a clover foundation, every season afterward becomes easier. You'll spend less time pulling weeds, less time watering, and far less time hauling mulch from place to place. Your soil structure improves naturally, earthworms become more active, and your garden starts functioning like a real ecosystem instead of a constant chore.
Now let's look at the second seed that can fundamentally change how you maintain your garden. Annual buckwheat. If white clover is your steady, long-term living mulch, then buckwheat is your fast-action, rapid-response partner. Gardeners sometimes call it the emergency mulch plant because of how quickly it covers bare soil and shuts down weed growth. And once you see how efficiently it performs, you'll understand why. Buckwheat is one of the quickest-growing cover crops on the planet. In warm weather, it can sprout in just a few days and reach full canopy height in as little as 3 weeks. That means if you have a bed that's empty between plantings, or you've just harvested a crop and you're not ready to plant the next one yet, buckwheat can step in immediately to protect that soil from drying out, getting compacted, or being overtaken by weeds. The structure of buckwheat is what makes it so effective. Its leaves form a broad, overlapping canopy that blocks sunlight from reaching the soil surface. Without light, weed seeds simply can't germinate. Unlike hardwood mulch or straw, which takes time to spread and still leaves gaps, buckwheat creates a seamless, living shield within days. Even notorious weed species struggle to compete under it. But speed isn't the only advantage. Buckwheat is incredibly soft-stemmed and breaks down faster than almost any other cover crop. This is what makes it ideal for chop-and-drop mulching. When the plants begin to flower, which usually happens around 3 to 4 weeks after planting, you can simply cut the stems with pruners or a small sickle and let them fall directly onto the soil. The soft plant material decomposes so quickly that it becomes a natural mulch layer almost overnight. In just a day or two, the residue begins melting into the soil, feeding microbes and improving structure. Another bonus? Buckwheat is a magnet for beneficial insects. Its delicate white blossoms attract honeybees, native bees, hoverflies, lacewings, and even parasitic wasps, the friendly kind that keep pest insects under control. If you're trying to boost pollination or reduce chemical use in your garden, planting a quick patch of buckwheat is one of the easiest strategies. Buckwheat does have a timing nuance that gardeners should understand. It thrives in warm conditions and is frost sensitive. That means it's perfect for planting in late spring, throughout summer, and into early fall in many parts of the United States. If you plant it too early or too late in the season, cold temperatures can kill it. But that's actually not a problem. Its quick growth window means you can replant at any time when temperatures are suitable. To plant buckwheat, simply scatter the seeds evenly over the soil surface and rake them lightly so they're just barely covered. They don't need much depth. About ½ an inch is enough. Water well after seeding, and you'll see life emerge in no time. Once it's up, buckwheat grows so fast that you'll feel like your garden is evolving in real time. One of the best ways to use buckwheat is between crop rotations. Let's say your spring lettuce is done and you're not ready to plant your fall crops yet. Instead of leaving the soil bare for weeks, seed buckwheat. It will protect the bed, add organic matter, suppress weeds, and build microbial activity.
Then, when you're ready for your next planting, simply chop it down, let the mulch settle for a few days, and plant directly into the enriched soil. Think of buckwheat as your flexible, fast-growing mulch producer. It steps in whenever you need temporary coverage and leaves your soil healthier every time. When combined with clover, it creates a garden ecosystem that manages itself. Long-term coverage from clover, rapid biomass, and weed suppression from buckwheat.
At this point, you might be wondering, how can two simple plants actually replace the entire job of mulching? After all, traditional mulch, whether it's wood chips, straw, or shredded leaves, has been the go-to method for gardeners for decades. But once you understand how living mulch behaves inside a garden ecosystem, you'll realize that clover and buckwheat aren't just substitutes for mulch. They're a better, more complete version of it. Let's start with the basics. Mulch is traditionally used to protect the soil, to keep weeds from sprouting, prevent moisture from evaporating, regulate temperature, and stop erosion. Living mulch does all of that, but it also adds functions that no dead material can provide. Unlike a layer of wood chips that sits passively on top of the soil, living mulch is alive, constantly responding to weather, sunlight, rainfall, and the needs of the garden. Take weed suppression. A pile of mulch only blocks weeds where it's thick enough and consistent enough. Any thin spots let weeds through. Living mulch, on the other hand, grows and thickens automatically. Clover forms a dense, low canopy that naturally fills gaps. Buckwheat creates a fast-growing curtain that overwhelms even stubborn weed species. Instead of gardeners doing the adjusting, the plants do it themselves. Then there's temperature regulation. Bare soil absorbs heat quickly, but even mulched soil can heat up when the mulch dries out. Living mulch is different. Because the plants are photosynthesizing, evaporating water, and shading the ground, the soil underneath stays dramatically cooler. During summer heat waves, this can mean the difference between thriving crops and stressed, wilted ones. Many gardeners are shocked to discover how cool the soil remains beneath clover or buckwheat, often 10 to 15 degrees cooler than exposed areas. Another major advantage is moisture retention. Traditional mulch slows evaporation. Living mulch nearly stops it. The roots of clover and buckwheat act like a sponge, holding water in the topsoil instead of letting it escape. When rain falls, the leaves soften the impact, preventing the soil from sealing over or eroding. Instead of water running off, it sinks in gently and stays there. And because living mulch creates continuous shade, that moisture lasts far longer than it would under wood chips. But the benefit gardeners love most is soil improvement. Mulch improves soil only when it breaks down, which can take months or even years. Living mulch improves soil constantly. Clover adds nitrogen naturally, enriching the ground for vegetables that follow. Buckwheat pulls up minerals from deeper soil layers, storing them in its soft stems. When you chop and drop it, those minerals return to the surface where your crops can access them. Every cycle of growth and decomposition makes your soil richer, softer, and more biologically active. There's also the ecological effect. Living mulch provides habitat for beneficial insects, fungi, and microorganisms. Earthworms thrive beneath it. Soil microbes explode in number. And because your garden becomes a living network rather than a barren surface covered in chips, pest pressure often decreases while plant health increases. You're not just mulching, you're restoring a micro-ecosystem. All of this happens with less work,
not more. No hauling mulch, no spreading heavy bags, no refreshing layers each season. The living mulch maintains itself. You simply mow, trim, or chop it when needed, and it rewards you by growing back stronger. When you think about it, mulching with dead material is a temporary fix. Living mulch is a long-term solution that turns your soil into a thriving, self-sustaining environment. It's like having a team of tiny gardeners covering, cooling, feeding, and protecting your beds around the clock.
Now that you know how white clover and buckwheat work, let's talk about how to actually use them in a real American backyard garden. This is where everything comes together. Living mulch isn't just a concept, it's a practical, flexible system you can customize for raised beds, in-ground rows, greenhouse walkways, or even container gardens. The first step is knowing where each plant performs best. Think of white clover as your permanent coverage layer. It thrives in spaces where you want consistent protection, between vegetable rows, around perennials like blueberries or fruit trees, along pathways, or in any spot where weeds tend to pop up year after year. Clover spreads slowly but steadily, filling gaps and forming a long-lasting green mat that comes back every season with minimal effort. Once established, it's like having a built-in mulch layer that's always working. Buckwheat, on the other hand, is your seasonal problem solver. It's perfect for beds that open up unexpectedly. Maybe your spring lettuce bolted early, or you harvested your garlic and now have an empty patch. Instead of letting weeds take over, you can sow buckwheat and get complete soil coverage in just a couple of weeks. Its speed makes it ideal for transitional periods when the garden feels a bit chaotic. Let's walk through practical examples. If you're growing tall vegetables like tomatoes, peppers, pole beans, corn, or okra, plant clover around the base once your seedlings are established. The clover stays low and never interferes with the taller crops. It acts like a protective rug around the root zone, keeping moisture locked in and boosting nitrogen availability all summer. In pathways, clover is unbeatable. Instead of constantly mulching or weeding the walkways, let clover create a soft, green surface. It handles foot traffic well, and you can mow or trim it anytime you want a cleaner look. Gardeners who switch to clover paths often wonder why they didn't do it sooner. For buckwheat, imagine you just cleared out a bed and don't plan to replant for 3 or 4 weeks. In that gap, weeds would normally explode. But if you broadcast buckwheat seeds right away, that bed will stay protected. When the plants begin to flower, simply chop them down and let the residue fall. After a few days of decomposition, the soil will be rich, dark, and ready for your next crop. You don't have to remove anything. The stems become mulch, the roots feed the soil organisms, and the bed stays soft and workable. One powerful strategy is to alternate clover and buckwheat throughout the gardening year. Use clover for long-term stability and buckwheat for fast bursts of biomass. For example, maintain clover pathways and surrounding areas while using buckwheat in the vegetable beds between plantings. Many gardeners find that this combination gives them the perfect balance: permanent coverage plus rapid nutrient cycling. And don't worry about planting these seeds perfectly. Both plants are forgiving. Clover can be reseeded anytime you notice thin spots. Buckwheat can be sown thickly without harming anything. Even mistakes still improve your soil. The key is consistency. Anytime soil becomes exposed, cover it with one of these living mulches. Over time, you'll notice fewer weeds, softer soil, cooler temperatures, and healthier plants. Your garden will feel more alive, more resilient, and more self-sustaining.
just by using these two simple seeds strategically. As you reach the end of your first season using white clover and buckwheat, you'll start to notice something remarkable happening in your garden. The soil looks darker and richer. The surface stays cool even in the hottest months. Weeds are fewer, smaller, and much easier to manage. Watering becomes less frequent because moisture simply stays where your plants need it. And perhaps most noticeably, your vegetables look stronger, healthier, and more vibrant than they did before. This is the power of living mulch. It creates a garden that quietly takes care of itself. Instead of constantly reacting to problems, like weeds, dry soil, or nutrient deficiencies, you've built a system that prevents those problems from forming in the first place. Clover keeps the ground protected all season, feeding the soil and supporting long-term fertility. Buckwheat fills in the gaps, rapidly producing biomass and nourishment each time a bed opens up. Together, they form a continuous cycle of growth, coverage, and renewal. Over time, you may find that you no longer think about mulching at all. There's no hauling, no spreading, no replenishing. No stacks of bags in the driveway every spring. Just a living, breathing soil cover that adapts to your garden's needs. And the best part? Each year it gets easier. Once your living mulch system is established, the workload drops dramatically, while the productivity of your garden rises. If you've been searching for a way to garden more sustainably, more efficiently, and more in harmony with nature, this is it. Two simple seeds, white clover and buckwheat, have the power to transform both your soil and your entire gardening experience. Thank you for joining me today. If this video inspired you to try living mulch in your own backyard, make sure to subscribe for more practical gardening tips, greenhouse insights, and regenerative growing methods. Until next time, plant smart, grow abundantly, and enjoy the garden that grows with you.